welcome to our podcast, Novel Ideas, a podcast where we talk with political pros about developing a new playbook for democratic media. We're talking with our industry's best and brightest about the new strategies we need to win because we know we are not going to win the future with the playbooks of the past. I'm Rachel Campbell. I'm an almost 20-year industry veteran of politics and digital media and CEO at Novel Messaging. I love talking to smart people and turning hot takes into action. On today's episode, we're talking with Nina Smith, president of Polysol Public Affairs. Nina is a very excellent and seasoned senior communications strategist. She's been in the trenches advising a lot of our favorite Democrats and next generation leaders, including Pete Buttigieg as his traveling press secretary during his presidential campaign, including Stacey Abrams as a senior communications advisor. And she also works with a lot of groups across the movement, including Movement for Black Lives, the DCCC, Georgetown University's Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation, among others. So Anita is super talented, really skilled at harnessing the power of lived experience to enhance her storytelling and working with a broad range of clients at really interesting parts of our movement across the space. We're so lucky to have her here. Thanks so much for joining us, Nina.
Thank you. And I'm just really thrilled to be with you to have this conversation, a really important and needed conversation.
We've had plenty of these conversations privately on the phone over the last several years. So I'm very excited to let people in on the genius that I've gotten to experience one on one. So, okay. We like to start by getting to know you a little bit better. And so I want to ask you, we just covered a lot of like your great professional work, but we want to know you as a person. So we like to ask, sort of who you are, why you're a Democrat, and what brings you to this work and kind of what motivates you to keep doing it.
First of all, thank you for having me. This conversation. Oh goodness, it's great to get it, recorded and into the world. But I'll say this, like for me personally, uh, who am I? I'm the oldest of four kids, eldest child of immigrant parents who came here from Ghana in West Africa. It just shapes a lot of how I view the world, and who I am and how I show up. Uh, I also am an avid sports fan, though, like, I don't get into stats and stuff, like, it's so funny as a woman, if you say you love sports and then you talk to a dude and they're like, "Hey, tell me all the stats
Prove
about
it.
ABC." It's like, "Come on, shut up." Anyway, so, like, I'm a big sports person, I played basketball for a long time, and so I still have a lot of love for all manner of stuff. I, love politics fiercely, and believe in changing, using politics as a vehicle to change the world. And besides all of that, I just absolutely love telling stories and watching reality TV and to decompress.
Are you a Real
Oh God,
Housewife?
all of them.
Okay.
Because like I'm a millennial, so I started out with the Real World, and like now I'm watching Real Housewives. So like and Below Deck. So I'm a Bravo girly for sure.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Good to know.
like oh, I love them.
It's like a generational thing for sure. I think it's like, oh, yeah, we all came up on it. Awesome. Love that.
Yes.
And I think we have some lessons to learn from our housewife friends in Democratic politics.
I mean, yes. I mean, not just the housewives, but also like I love Paige DeSorbo.
Mhm.
Like the women of Bravo, I think, are really just amazing, authentic individuals. And I think, reality TV, I think the sort of gift in that is like, I don't know, we get to see ourselves in other humans
Mm.
and seeing other humans be humans in similar situations we experience to some degree, even if it's like theirs is on like a mass scale. There are similarities because we're all humans at the end of the day. And just part of the reason why also I got into Democratic politics, and I went to Catholic schools my entire life, and of course, I questioned a lot of the orthodoxy, like, was, like, shouting I was, like, pro-choice when I was in 8th grade. Just, like, letting my teachers know, "Yeah, like, I don't believe in any of this."
Mm.
But what I did really appreciate about Catholicism is kind of like I've been reflecting a lot about this because of, the Pope
Sure.
passing, but the good things I got from Catholicism was this, alms for the poor and like,
Mhm.
serving others. And a lot of those values that they instilled in me are values that brought me to the Democratic Party. And so I don't know, like I always felt like they instilled the justice piece,
Yes.
justice value within me that I think has, always just drawn me to politics in a very real way.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I really appreciate that, and maybe well, also eldest daughter here, duh, in case that wasn't already obvious, but this is also a big part of, like, my how my moral framework and my values were
Yes.
shaped. Um,
Yes.
remember when church used to be about helping the most vulnerable and the least among us? Remember that? Yeah, and,
Mm,
cool.
feels so far away.
I love that. I didn't know that about you, so that's also fun when we, like, learn things. Okay. Um, so we like to talk here there's 8,000,000 things we could point to that the Democratic Party is not doing well or needs to do better, and you and I have had a fair amount of conversations covering a lot of ground on this
Yes, I
topic.
have opinions.
But we wanted to focus in on today on, what's one thing you can kind of, you wanna draw some attention to or that you wish more people were paying attention to that the Democratic Party has a problem with?
Uh, I think we have a pipeline problem.
Woo!
Uh, uh, and particularly, I mean, we've done a lot of work, I think, in the last, I would say, since about 2016. So about last 9 or so years, 10 years, we've been focused almost exclusively on candidate recruitment, candidate quality, which I think is fantastic, right? But I think we haven't necessarily balanced that out with priming the pipeline for future Democratic staffers, right? And to me, I feel like it's the young people that help the party stay relevant, right? And help us innovate and push us to our leading edge. And I think we've lost the thread on that, and it's shown up in so many different ways. Our approach to voter registration, and at least from some of the rumored talk from some of our donors, and like some of the talk around, um, you know, or the lack of presence or how people feel about some of our other institutions like the Young Dems and College Democrats, and are those organizations flourishing? Or, what's our counterpoint to Turning Point? Who's showing up on college campuses and talking to young people, and are they armed with messages or an appeal that makes people want to join us? And I don't
Mhm.
think we have enough of that going for us right now.
Mhm. It's really hurting us too, well, and I know that there are some groups doing work on this, like, I know Arena does a lot of training and thinks about staff pipelines. I know, like, the Blue Leadership Collaborative and, some folks in that space are doing work on this, but I think they would probably double click everything you're saying and agree because I think it needs a lot more investment and resources. And one of the places I'm seeing it show up where it's like actively hurting us is as we all collectively reckon with democratic politics need to innovate and improve online, particularly with organic social, we need folks who are more native and comfortable with those platforms and like, I'm trying to hire for some social media managers for campaigns, and you would be shocked at how thin the pool is for that, which I think kind of says everything in that right there. So, I'm curious, like, are you seeing that show up? Are you how are you seeing that impact the work?
The staffing up has become so much harder. I would say in the last like few cycles. I haven't come across folks who have said, "Oh, we have 0 problems with staffing up," in a very long time, and I think it's mostly because, you know, again, I came up I'm a product of the Howard Dean 50 state strategy, okay? So, I happen to be a young Democrat. I got pulled into the party to work, my first job out of college was for a state Democratic Party in Maryland. So, not only was I a young Dem, but I had the social reinforcement, I'm sorry, not only did I work for the party, but I had the social reinforcement of the young Dems that kind of kept me in the space. And, with that, it's like you have a dual kind of quality to you, right? Because when you're a young Dem, you understand how the party works. You understand, what campaigns are, right? Because you're somewhat aware and engaged in campaigns. You have an understanding of the issues and can communicate it to your friends and family, right? You kind of become your own like centrifugal force, that like
Mhm,
pulls your
yeah.
family along, and brings them to the places they need to bring. I'll name, gay marriage was one piece where a lot of young people brought their parents to a good place on gay marriage. And so I think, when we are disconnected from young people, we're disconnected from the future. And those little subtle pieces, these are tactical pieces, but they reinforce the whole, right? They made the Democratic Party home for me. And we're not making the Democratic Party home for young people right now.
Yeah, and I think, like, I think we've all seen that polling about the dramatic partisan split among, what is it, like, 18 to 24 or something like that, where, like, obviously, younger men went way more for Trump than I think many people expected, and younger women have, in part because of Dobbs and other things, are being drawn even more to the Democratic Party. So there's like this crazy gender divide, which is like opportunity and challenge, and I'm not really seeing, to your point, like, much in the way of a focused effort on what we're gonna do about it, what's our plan, like, yeah, and we're not
It's
in the
it's
places
it's a
where they
bit
consume
horrifying if
media.
you think about it, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I turned around, and it's so ironic because it was a lot of my thinking around this is based on a conversation I had with younger staffers who, former colleagues of mine, who kind of pulled me up and said, "What are you doing right now? The party needs you." And it's like, oh yeah, like as millennials, we kind of have to figure out how we can really rebuild the pipeline because we've experienced it and a lot of us came through it. What are we doing to kind of rebuild that space? So I'm starting to talk more about it and try to figure out ways that I can like help, right? And help people understand that we cannot neglect this conversation because these folks are our future. We can't write off young people as like being obsessed with TikTok when we're not engaging with them on their college campuses. It's like this conversation where people are just talking past the problem to make themselves feel better about it. And it's not helping. You're not helping.
Well,
Stop.
doesn't it doesn't it, like, mirror the conversation folks are having about who's in elected office and who's in leadership at that level too? Because, like, I think it's hard for the younger folks who did, a lot of younger folks got pulled in, during the presidential, which happens every time there's a presidential, you staff up massively. It's a great opportunity to pull younger folks in and, like, to the pipeline like you're talking about. But I am finding that a lot of the work they wanna do, they're not allowed to do it the way they think it should be done, um, and when they look up, they don't see a path that they're interested in because there's no, the work that they wanna do is not currently reflected at leadership levels. Like, digital directors are kind of still treated as, like, in many organizations, like, not at the grown-up table for senior strategic decision making, and so if you're interested in that and good at that and wanna do that, and you look up and you don't see a path to any sort of future or career, you're gonna go to the private sector where you can go get paid way more money, have much better work-life balance, and have a path. So, I mean, part, it's like the path, it's the how are we meeting them where they are, but it's all reflective of, like, we're not evolving and giving people opportunity to do what's needed.
Bingo.
Yeah,
Bingo. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we're not being allowed to innovate in basic staff structure, um, which I mean, I think it's like a general attitude for the party. I've seen campaigns where that isn't the case. and people who have tried and experimented. And I've been lucky enough to work with two of them who are like, okay, we're going to have to think outside of the box about how we structure the campaign, but also how we engage in these conversations, right? And I think again, it's that they're both young. You know what I'm saying? The 2 campaigns I'm thinking about, they were young people, or young within the respects of, like, politics, right? And
Yeah.
had an understanding and a connection to how things are changing, where people are going for their information,
Yeah.
right? And where the trust is, right? And, I think the smart ones are catching on to it,
Yeah.
and the ones who are very comfortable and not unwilling to evolve because, they've always done things this way and it's always worked for them. And that's what, like, I mean, unfortunately, they both exist.
Yeah.
And, the party is suffering under an excess of one rather than the other.
Yeah. Wait, so I'm gonna, like, pivot us into our next section. This is a perfect tee up into,
Yeah.
sort of like, what's your novel idea? And you just alluded to a couple campaigns you've seen where it looked like what it should look like, or what they were innovating on what it could look like. Say more about that. Say more about, like, how we solve this problem.
Well, I think we have to get on a basic level an understanding of the difference between traditional communications and digital.
Whew.
And I think the big issue right now is that I've seen in too many structures that there's a tendency to put digi under comms, which I
Mhm.
mean, again, if you're thinking about we're going to get into like personnel stuff, but
Yeah.
like you think about a broader structure, right? Where there's a person who oversees a department
Mhm.
and, you'll sometimes have smaller departments that the person who oversees the large department, these are sub buckets
Yep.
under this bigger bucket,
Yep.
right? And I think there are too many people who are overseeing digi and comms
Mhm.
who either have an over understanding of one or an understanding of the other. And because of that, um, something gets neglected.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think for me personally, I
And
think
I've
it
never seen
works
it be
best.
comms, just to be clear. Or earned media, I should say. I've never seen that
Well,
kind of thing.
like a lot of people just don't understand those fundamental differences.
Yeah.
And a lot of the trainings that I do for candidates, for young staffers, is to help them. Let's get clear on what you know, owned media looks like, what digi media, how that fits into those spaces. What does that mean? And even that's evolving. And here's the tension point that we're at in our evolution as humans. All of this stuff is so new. Like, I remember joining Twitter in 2009.
Yep. I was right there with you.
What a different world Twitter was in 2009.
Yep.
It was magic, okay? It was magic, and, of course, now it's like a hellscape, but, it was a place where you could organize, right? You can organize around TV shows, you could organize around moving legislation, which I've done using Twitter. Like, they were just, like, different. It was just a different world, but I think again, when it comes to this personal piece, there are not enough people, I think, who have either come through that lens, have had to use social media as a tool, and recognize that, hey, this is a full-time job. This has its own practicum and like application. I mean, there's some relativity, I think, to marketing when you think about that. So, there's something that could be said about marketing and like thinking about it. But in a political context, right, it's different. And I think our industry has failed, at least on the Democratic side. I suspect the Republicans are doing it better based on some of the ways they spread their information. That they figure something out. We have not. And until we do, we're gonna continue to run into issues. I'm happy to see some things like, they're doing some war rooms changes that I'm hearing about at the DNC and stuff like that. But we have to respect this as a practice. People don't respect communications enough, period. Okay. Everybody thinks they can do communications. Everybody thinks they can do social media. And honey, no, it's not true. Okay. There's some things that I know I'm not good at. Okay?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm not a I like making reels. I'm not a videographer. I'm not
yeah,
a creator.
yeah,
So I mean, I think
yep,
until we get to a place where we're recognizing our weaknesses and giving credit and value to people who know what they're doing in this space and have an expertise and a talent to offer, we're going to keep losing good people to the private sector. Half of the digi people I've met in the last 5 years or so have come from corporate America because they wanted to do something better, but their talent has been met by barriers.
yep,
Their talent has been met by them not understanding how politics works versus corporate America. And that's also created a barrier for them as well. Makes
yeah.
it difficult for them to move over here because this is a different space. It's not corporate America.
Selling ideas is very different than selling product for sure. So you have also been in my brain. You're somebody who's like planted some seeds in my brain over the last few years on like you've done some really interesting work, and I want to hear you talk about it if you're comfortable sharing some work. I'm thinking about your what you told me about Green Book, where it used to be like we'd pitch earned media, and then that would get amplified on social. But like you've almost found more success flipping that, and that's something I think about a lot too. So do you mind like sharing a little bit because I think that brings to life so many of these themes.
I mean, again, a lot of I try to see the interconnectivity of things a lot of
Mhm.
times. I mean, I think it comes from us naturally being women and like having to navigate this world. For me, navigating it as a Black woman, I'm constantly looking at what are the intersections, right? How are these two things showing up together,
Yep.
right? And I think, it's kind of helped me when it comes to integrated comms, because I've done so much. I've utilized social media as an organizing tool outside of it
Mhm.
being a social tool.
Yep.
I've seen the power of both. Like I was doing scandal parties and hosting scandal or helping folks host scandal parties on social media, but also in person, and having to do that integration. And so, for years I've been trying to figure out, right, now that we're moving more into a space where media outlets are going exclusively on social. They're all digital media outlets. When I first started in communications, I'm dating myself. But when I first got into communications, we were clipping newspaper articles.
Yeah.
Like, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So
Print. Imagine.
print, like it was, like my mom had a typewriter. Like these things, you just see them kind of evolve. And, with the Digital Green Book, which is this brilliant project from the good folks, a client of mine, Onyx Impact. So I am going to plug the client. But
Yeah.
yeah, so plugging, yes, they're doing some really important work on information online and how it targets Black folks, right? And whether it's information that good information that moves or bad information that is misleading people and leading to different outcomes, whether it's like, poor mental health outcomes or, getting misinformation that, suppresses the vote, right? And so we've been kind of like trying to figure out the best ways to help people understand what is happening to them. We have social media companies that are increasingly willing to throw their users to the wolves online in order to curry favor and continue making profit off of our backs, right? And continue peddling or allowing this peddling of misinformation on their platforms, without really considering the harm it's doing to the people, the end user, right? And so we wanted to put together, Asosa Osa brilliantly put together this digital guidebook to help particularly Black folks, because we're targeted at 3 times the national rate of other populations with misinformation, um, mostly because we're super skeptical. Like, it takes a lot for us to believe something. That's why they have to target us so much with it. But, we came up with this guidebook, that honors and is a look back to the original Green Book, which was, and I apologize if I'm wrong here, but it was first released in the 1930s, and as a means to helping Black travelers navigate America safely, because this was during the Jim Crow South.
Yep.
It was not always safe to travel as a Black person in this country.
Yep.
And so that's what we're seeing here in digital spaces. It is not always safe as a Black person to navigate these spaces. So we came up with a digital green book, which has best practices for how to navigate and tailor your feed and help you understand, like, if you want to filter things out, how to filter things out. How to also help spot misinformation and disinformation, some best practices to help regulate yourself. Like if something is making you overly emotional, you may want to double check the facts on that, right? Because that's what misinformation thrives on. Just different tips like that. There's also a lot of misinformation out there about what policies, agendas there are for Black Americans. It attempts to aggregate some of those Black agendas for folks to see. So it's just kind of like trying to help with some sort of guide that people can look to at a time where, as the Sosa will say over and over again, that we are in an information war, and it's so true that people are playing on the mistrust that has been sown. I think through politics and in our institutions over the last like 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And so because of that, the Green Book is really, really relevant and we're very excited about it. It includes, this AI tool that will help folks if you ask, her name's Aisha. If you ask Aisha a question, she'll pull information for you and help answer your questions. She's sourced by Black researchers. We focus on highlighting Black newspapers who have been around for 200 years, by the way, so
Yes.
can be good sources of information
Yes.
and historical fact.
Yes.
And just really trying to make sure that there's a resource and a place that people can go to get good information.
I love it. It's such a great model of education, but, like, also all the tactics are so
Yes.
smart, and giving people tools that fit how they're already interacting and, like, are platform specific, and, if you're talking about digital, maybe not a PDF, like, maybe digital tools, like,
Yes.
love that.
I mean, maybe think differently about it. And I mean, I think the part that was probably most fascinating to you about this, right? The book itself is amazing. But what was fascinating about the rollout and the way we
Yeah,
approached it was that we kind of did some inversion and we really focused on integrated comms because listen, the Green Book is great, but it's not necessarily, going to get you 10 million clicks because it's not focused on Donald Trump, right?
right.
And so what we were trying to figure out is how can we help people, help media outlets cover this? What
Yeah,
can we do to make this sexy enough for them to want to pick it up? So we did an exclusive on it and got that published, but we also utilized the creator strategy and
beautiful.
engaged with creators and asked them to talk about the Green Book. And by pushing online very, very hard because we went harder on the digital comms to help generate more interest from the traditional comms, and that's where
Yes,
the inversion kind of happened. We knew that if we, got generated any sort of interest or virility or just people, like, talking about it online, that would help generate and gin up, news coverage, and it did, and helped us get something that is an exclusively, tool that's focused on Black folks. We did get coverage in exclusively Black. A lot of Black publications have covered this, but we also got coverage from Axios, and we've
yeah,
gotten interest from other folks about the tool itself and what it's up to. So that's the difference here. Like typically,
yes,
you have the press release, and you go out with the press release, and you do
yeah,
their exclusive, and then maybe you do a social post with a link to the traditional media
yep,
head. And now it's, what can we do to get creators engaged in this conversation to help market to their followers why this tool is important? And I think more and more of us need to be thinking about it that way because, like we can mix it up, we can try something new. And I think that is the way of the future.
yes, yes, I think I love this story so much, A, because it's just, like, super smart, interesting, important work, but B, like, this playbook piece, this is a model of what new playbooks can and should look like, and obviously that's, like, what we're here to talk about. I just love it. I think because it's just to unpack this a little bit more, it's not one or the other. It's both and using them smartly to support each other, right? So, like, yes to the exclusive, yes to the creators, and then that tees up more earned media, and, like, it's not, siloed where, like, this is how it looks on the internet, but if you read about it in the press, you're hearing a totally different story. It's it's integrate like, yeah, I'm just repeating what you're saying, but it's integrated comms at its best level, and I just unfortunately, like, we don't have that many examples of what it can look like when it's done well. So I'm really excited to, like, share that with folks, and
Thank
I think
you.
it's such a great story. I also think it's exactly what the right has been doing for a long time. Like, I had this whole thing in a training deck for a while about the term CRT. We
Yes.
only know because of right-wing creators making it a thing. Then it made its way onto Fox News, and then the next thing you know, and this is old news at this point, but it was like Glenn Youngkin's first executive order as governor when he was elected,
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
because folks online made it a thing that then traditional media picked up,
Picked up.
and that is
Mhm.
the playbook the right has been doing for a long time, and we are still treating the internet as, like, this weird space over here that we're a little scared of and is, like, a little dangerous, and we are much more obviously painting with, like, super broad strokes here, but I think institutionally, structurally, our party is still very much more aligned to earned media, traditional legacy media being the priority, the place we feel safe, the place where real strategy is done, and w to tie it back to the pipeline, we don't treat the work of, like, the internet or content creators or organic content as at the big kids table in terms of strategy, and really, it's like, A, we've way missed the boat, it's already been the big kids table, and maybe is now surpassing traditional media in terms of relevancy to set narrative. So,
I mean, at the end of the day, listen, like, media is still a business. It's still a
yes.
capitalist business, and it's
Yeah.
an industry. And, in order for, folks to, um, you know, uh, really, I think, understand where we're going, you have to understand, um, the power of social media, right?
Mhm.
And that it's not a sub tool, right? It
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
becoming the tool. And I
Mhm.
mean, it's just interesting to me because, like, as a professional, you read the professional stuff that comes out about the industry. And one of the things that I've been reading over several years is where people get their news
Yep.
and where the consumption is happening. And I've been looking at this since at least 2013.
Yep.
Because I used it to help me with grad school. It was like Pew's little annual study of like the
Yes.
media is like my Bible for how to get media hits, right?
Yep.
Like that I need to know where my folks, my clients, people are.
Yep.
And so, a lot of times, you know, donors are thinking, and I hate to be that person, but
Be
I hear
it.
so many
Be
times
that
from my
person.
clients that the donors are looking for earned media hits. We have to be in the New Yorker. We have to be in the New York Times. That's the only way the donor feels like the media hit is worth it. Meanwhile, Breitbart is getting spread all over the place and used as a source. Like, meanwhile, we're neglecting good Black newspapers who have been around for 200 years. It's just like this um, disconnect, right? Like, I think the organizations, the people who do the work to some degree have a sense and a notion that going to New York Times, it's behind a paywall. Like, I can't even really share it with anybody who can read it, but fine, the donors want it.
Yeah.
That's not communicating the work to the people they need to move.
Right. 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 I
And
think
so it hurts us in the long run.
I think
It's
that's right. It used to be you were talking about the good old days of Twitter, and the
Mhm.
way I've thought about it, the early days of social media, it was like a town square. It actually was a town square, and we all were, like, on the edges, but we could all look down into the town square and see the same kind of conversations. And what has happened what how the internet has evolved is now it's much more like a city with multiple town squares, and it depends on, or I've heard some people use the analogy of a honeycomb, and there's like different pockets, right? And so I think we are still, to your point about why this is the argument why so many people still prioritize legacy media so much is because the donors. That's literally like overtly what you hear over and over. I have to do it because that's what our donors care about. Because our
Mhm.
donors live in that town square or that pocket of the honeycomb or whatever. The problem is nobody else does anymore. The people who read the New York
You're
Times.
talking to yourselves, y'all. You're talking to yourselves.
And there's this whole other
I'm sorry. I'm gonna say this to the camera. I'm so sorry, y'all. You're talking to yourselves.
you're talking to
It's just you and you.
yourself. And then they're confused. Why don't the voters understand why tariffs are bad? Well,
Mhm.
because you're only talking about it in your little honeycomb over here. And they're over in their honeycomb hearing from all of these podcast bros about something totally different or about, immigrants who are going to murder them or whatever. So I know, I guess, I've reached a point where I feel like this is so known and so well documented that we know what to do. Right now, we've hit this interesting point where are we actually gonna muster the resources and the will to do it? And I think jury's still out. I think jury's still out.
I'm with you because the way I'm seeing things moving now for different nonprofits or for organizations who rely on donors to help them function.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, the money is slow,
Yeah, yeah,
and there's a lot of I think there's a lot of fear, and I think that's another big success for the right in that they've managed to scare us. They've arrested our people. They've put out executive orders targeting our law firms. Everybody is in self-protect and self-protection mode. And I get it, right? I want to acknowledge that because
yeah.
it's a scary time. And you know, I I think we have to also ask ourselves, what are we gonna do,
Mhm,
right? Are we going to let fear be the driver of where we go next?
mhm.
And I, for one, am trying not to do that. So yeah, it involves me like, talking directly to the camera to donors, friends. We gonna do this, we gonna do this. What's up?
Let's do it. Let's
Let's
do
do it.
it. I mean, that's yeah, I mean, we can go quietly into the night and hope it doesn't come for us, or we can organize. I mean, it's all organizing. Like, you wanna get into this metaphor, whether it's town squares or whether it's honeycombs, we gotta go meet the people where they are, and the tools of doing that work are changing, but the work stays the same. Like,
It does.
I don't know.
It does. And it's only gonna get more like this,
Yeah,
like the country is evolving and we're getting left behind.
yeah.
Like we're back there.
Yeah, and for a lot of the donors, or the sort of intellectual elite who live in their honeycomb of the New York Times and, um, have the option of, you know, pulling back and being protective at this moment, protecting their own interests, they're gonna be fine. Like, they'll keep being fine. But the people who we're supposedly all here to fight for, they're not gonna be fine. And, you know, I think it's easy for me to say, "I don't know, we're out here on the internet talking about this. We're putting this out here." So, we all have to be brave in our own ways, and I think it's a time for bravery and a time for maybe this is an interesting way to I think it's a time to be comfortable with discomfort and to be comfortable with risk and experimentation and creativity, um, none of which, like, makes for a good, end of year report for a donor necessarily, but I don't know. That we gotta try something else, y'all. We gotta do something different.
Well, I think it should be you're absolutely right. Like
Mhm.
the work that people are like, what are you up to? And I'm like, long-term work.
Mm,
Like the clients I have are all the sorts of organizations. One, thank God, don't rely on the federal government for funding,
yeah,
but two, organizations that um are thinking about, okay, what is the infrastructure we need for the next 10 years, right? How do we think about folks in the South and prioritize folks in the South and making sure that even as this stuff is going on at the national level, what can we do to help them build power politically on the local level, in places like Mississippi and Louisiana, right? Like, to me, that sort of very strategic application of energy is important. I think if you're thinking of as the average person, what can you do? Christina Greer has been talking about this political tithing thing, and I think it's brilliant, right? If you have $5 to $10 you want to give somewhere, that's another way of engaging in the space. But the bottom line, I feel like overall, is that there's some place for all of us in this
Yeah.
muck, right?
Yes.
We all have some sort of responsibility to engage and to help figure out and to be flexible
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because we don't know what's coming next. We have a sense, right? But we have to get comfortable with not knowing, with the metrics not being exactly what we want them to be because we're experimenting.
Yes. Yes.
Scientists will do trials
Yes.
and, we have to think about ourselves because we're political scientists. So why aren't
Yeah.
we treating this like a science?
Yeah.
Why aren't we experimenting? And yes, you can have controls. That's where, you still do TV and like put ads on TV and stuff. Like, right, you still have controls in this
Yeah.
experiment, but let's experiment. Let's dream. Let's
Yes.
do something.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That is a great note to end on. Lots of novel solutions dug up there. I want to take us to my favorite part of this little show. We're going to the hot takes hotline, Nina.
Give us a call at the Hot Takes Hotline.
Let's go. Okay, so for folks listening, we have launched the novel Hot Takes Hotline. You can call us at 1-844-4 Hot Takes and leave us your opinions on what Democrats are doing or not doing, your rant of the day, whatever you got. We're here. It's all anonymous, so call us and let us out. You get 60 seconds to just let it out, and we're here for you. Okay, so we're gonna go to the hotline. We've got a message that would love to hear your take on, Nina.
Okay, so almost every new client I've had in the last year has grilled me on being super innovative and creative, which I love. And then when we start working with them, they shy away from wanting to do anything out of the box or risky at all. And then we just end up doing the same standard polished content that everyone does that gets limited engagement. Uh, it's hard to be creative and innovative when some clients are so adverse to doing anything different.
Mm. A word.
I
I
was
think
like, oh, I felt that in my chest.
it's exactly what we were just speaking to, which is
Yes.
I think there is this, like, awkwardness. We're in this awkward transition right now where well-meaning, smart, talented people are like, "I wanna do it differently, I really do." And then when you're faced with approving some weirdo thing that you're not sure about versus the thing that you've done your whole career, like, human nature is real, and we're gonna be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna have to defend this to my boss," or, "Ooh, how do I justify this? Let me go with the safe route. Let me go with, like, I know I can defend this." Also, like, how terrible that we all feel we have to be so defensive. Like, that's a whole other how do we create more safety for people to experiment? We create more space for failure. Like, some stuff isn't gonna hit, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Anyway, I think it's a moment because not everybody is trying to be old school and just keep copying and pasting and keep sending out like, people are trying, and then I think this is the pitfall that a lot of people are falling into, you know?
Yeah, and just falling right back into old patterns and, you know, I think people have a certain comfort zone, have a certain, sense of, like, "I know the donors are gonna love this. They really liked it when we did this, and
Mhm.
they really love it when they see it every year."
Yeah.
Okay? I it's like, what can we do to kind of and I try to I'm gotten to the place where I'm trying to tell clients, like, "Listen, we have to do things differently than what if you wanna if sometimes I'll let them fail. Sometimes, right? Where they think they wanna do it one way, and I'm like, "Okay, great. That's fine. Let's try it." And if it doesn't give them what they're looking for, right, then I can say, okay, can we experiment? Yes, we'll still do these things, but let's try something else here. Or maybe let's try a DCC like after you leave the event, or like uh, let's do these things. And again, part of it is also like front loading. Like, listen, we may need to, I like doing trainings. I like on the front end letting you know that we're going to try some different things. And are your donors comfortable with those different things? Sometimes I've had to have those conversations. And so I think we have to also, unfortunately, because our clients are very stressed out with focusing on, donor reports and, trying to get the money in the door. We have to be the ones to be like, hey, try to level set with your donors that we're going to be doing some experimentation this year. That we want to see if we can push and drive our numbers up by trying a few different things. We set aside this amount of budget. As they're going over their budget, just start adding it in so that people start getting used to you experimenting.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Um, Again, I have a brilliant client who calls it a proof of concept
Yep.
for donors.
Yep.
It's such a smart way of framing it because we have a concept and we're trying to prove that it works. And I think the more we reorient folks, you know, to hey, that didn't really work before. Can we try something different?
You know
Yeah, let's try this dance move, you know?
you know what,
Maybe that
though?
will be, something that gets us where we need to be, right? Like I just think that I'm showing my corniness here, but
No.
I just really feel that it's so important to just, we have to manage the psychology of the thing
Yeah.
and manage our clients and it sucks because it's just like extra labor for something that feels very like we should all understand this. I thought we were all on the same page, but people, it's a very scary time. Money is tight and people want to feel safe, and
Yeah.
I think the best way is to just be honest,
Yeah.
just be honest and upfront and say this may fail, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's the part. It's such a scarcity mentality that we all have to
Yes.
operate in, and when you contrast that to the right, like, how much time and emotional labor and strategic energy is being wasted on our side about what's our proof of concept, and then how do we take it back and pitch it? How do we make the case that it was successful and that they should invest more? And how much talent is being and time is wasted on that when on the right, they're given these bros a huge studio and staff and letting them just make trash and publish it, and then they're giving them six-figure monthly ad budgets to promote that content and grow that audience, and, like, how much less, sort of proving it there's no proof of concept, or I don't know, I'm not on the right, maybe they put their teams through this rigmarole
Maybe we
too.
don't know.
Maybe we
Maybe we
don't
don't know.
know, but it
You
sure
know?
doesn't look like it from the
I
outside based
mean,
on the
it feels
product
like
I'm
the money's
seeing.
flowing like a spigot on. That's just
Yes,
like,
but can
whoa.
we're like, I just wanna name that to your point about, like, looking in the camera and talking to the donors, like, innovation doesn't happen under scarcity and fear and constraint. Like, creativity, one of the biggest ingredients of successful creative projects is trust. So, give people the room and the safety to play and recognize, like, not all of it's gonna hit, and that's okay, and if you're the kind of person who's in a position to fund organizations, like, are giving people the gift, and you're giving the party the gift of progress, and, what was it, like, Slack came out of a failed piece of some other tech tool they were developing. Like, you don't know what pieces of the failure are gonna grow to become the successes
The
of the
thing.
future, so, like, let people play. Like,
Let them play. Let them play.
ah,
Again, well, this also kind of speaks to something that I've been noticing just from an emotional
yeah.
standpoint for this country. Like nobody trusts each other anymore.
Oof.
Like, no, like we're all so suspicious and like everybody's trying to take our money.
Yeah.
And it's true because like the scammers are getting real slick and real creative.
Yes.
Like credit to y'all. Um, but no, I mean, there's just such a deficit of trust in everything and everyone that it's just making it hard for that creativity and that, innovation to really flourish.
Yeah.
And we're just it's so dry out here. Like, y'all, can we mix it up? Like,
It's
God,
so
oh, it make me
dry.
wanna get a drink of water. It's
It's
dry.
so dry.
It's dry.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll be led through the desert and, come out on the other side. Um, this is great. This is really helpful. I wanna thank you again for taking the time. I know you have a lot of really important work going on right now, so I really appreciate you prioritizing this and making time and space to be with us and share your brilliance. For folks who are listening, if you wanna follow Nina, stay in touch with her and her work, you can find her on LinkedIn. You can follow us and this podcast, on our Substack, novelmessaging.substack.com. We also publish all of our content on YouTube, so check us out at Novel Messaging on YouTube. And don't forget to call us and leave your hot takes on the Hot Takes hotline, 1-844-4 Hot Takes. We're here for you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time with more novel ideas.
I know y'all got them hot takes. We know y'all.
Get them in.
Give it up.
Get it in.